Hi again. This is Dr. Teresa Anderson, founder of the Anderson Clinic in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I am your host for Psych Waves. Today we have a very special guest, and this is one of those cool situations where in business you wind up visiting with people and making new friendships. And Dr. Rachel Faust is a friend of a friend of a friend. And we sort of met in those circles professionally. But Dr. Rachel, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell me everything that you do and a little bit about your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Anderson. I really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure.
Um, so, I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I also practice in Cincinnati, Ohio, out of my home. I have a fully telehealth practice called Love and Light Wellness that I am the founder of. I guess at this point, I consider myself an IFS therapist, an internal family systems therapist. I'm now level one trained, and honestly, it's just I've soaked it into my cells, and it's just a part of me. So it really is the parts work aspect of it is how I treat my clients, and also how I parent and take care of myself and all of that. So I look forward to getting into that. My background is in working with older adults, working in primary care. I've done a lot of different things, and it's all kind of compiled into a space where I am now taking better care of myself as a human being and more present for my kids. And that's why I'm in private practice now from home. So I can get them on and off the bus each day and be more present in their lives and just have more balance. And then pass that on to my clients as well, because I didn't used to practice what I preach. And now I'm in a space where I'm fortunate enough to be better able to do that. So,
I love that
yeah,
for you. That's awesome.
thank you.
So tell
Thank you.
me a little bit about internal family systems. I'm very curious because we, as psychiatrists, frequently are exposed to psychoanalytic theories and psychodynamic theories and a little bit of CBT, DBT on the side. But tell me how this differs in terms of the therapy that you do.
Yeah. So that's the background I came from as well, and nothing ever quite fully fit for me. So I just called myself an integrative therapist and went from there. IFS, internal family systems, was something that um, I heard about, and then it circled back again, and I started to learn about it, and I realized that actually I think that's the foundation, that's the frame for what I've already believed and felt, but was missing. So let me get more specific. So internal family systems is predicated on the idea that we are all multiple, right? I am a single individual, but within me, there are lots of different parts, and that is normal and natural, right? Part of me is so happy to be sitting here with you right now, talking about these things that I just geek out about all the time. And part of me is like, what's for dinner tonight? I have to think about what's next, right? These things are always normal and going on within us. Now, when we have a lot of stress in our lives and struggle, well, if you're a human being, you do, right? But how we deal with it, our parts help us and support us as we deal with life. And sometimes they take on roles, very often they take on roles when we are young that help us move through childhood as unscathed as we possibly can be. And usually those are very helpful things that they do when we're a kid. And then they keep doing it. They keep pushing us to do those things when we get older, because it worked then. Why wouldn't it work now? And then those old ways of coping end up causing problems in relationships later in life. So, to get more specific, parts can be divided into protectors, and also like the wounded. And it's normal to have both. The protectors can be manager parts that are really help us function well in daily life, and got you through medical school, got me through graduate school, right? Some manager parts are incredibly effective at their jobs, but sometimes they get too rigid, they get too controlling, or things are very black and white, and then they start to create problems for us. Well meaning, all parts are well meaning, but sometimes what is meant to be helpful is the opposite, ends up bringing on the opposite of what you want. And then there are firefighter parts. Firefighter parts are the ones who take over when it feels like the house is on fire, and so it doesn't matter what happens, all I need to do is survive right now, right? So for me, oftentimes it's eating, it's shopping, it's binge watching something, right? Which is not always a bad thing, right? And we're not judging these parts. The goal is to create space to understand how is this part trying to protect me, because I've got some wounded parts that are starting to show up right now, right? Something happened in my daily life that really triggered something in me, which happens all the time with parenting, I might add. And right, it overwhelms the system. And so we've got firefighter parts that are saying, put out the fire in any way possible. And the manager part saying, why did you just cope that way? What is wrong with me that I did that, right? And so they end up in a tug of war,
Mhm.
these parts. This resonated so much with me when I started to learn about it because it felt like my life and my experience. But what is so beautiful about IFS and has been so impactful for me over the years since I've gotten into it about 5 years ago is learning how to talk to these parts, to reparent them, basically, to hold space for this self energy, which is the other part of IFS, capital S self energy, that is basically like connection to our own highest good. So there's a spiritual aspect to this too, a connection to love, compassion, connection, curiosity, creativity, openness, like all of these kinds of things. When I can get into that self energy, get grounded and hold space for, I may not like the way I just behaved or the way I'm feeling right now, but I know that these are all parts inside me that are trying to help and support me. Let me hold space for them.
Mhm.
Let me hear them. Let me validate them and let them know it's okay that they feel that way. And also, I'm not going to let that one be the one in charge right now, right? Self energy needs to be the CEO, and then all the other ones are helpers who weigh in and have wonderful things to contribute. But maybe the way I handled that when I was 3 is not the way I want to handle it when I'm 43. And okay, but we build trust within our system over time, and it can create some incredible space for healing, but also progression in life, like moving more towards having a fuller, more balanced life, which is certainly what I have more now of compared to before I got into IFS. So
That's
I'll pause
amazing.
there.
I know I love that because
Yeah.
so much of our work is focused on trauma, right? And treatment resistant mood disorders and that sort of thing. And so I worked with people for years before being able to recognize that they can't hear what I'm saying if they're in survivor mode, right? They're in the firefighter
Mm-hmm.
mode, right? And
Yeah.
so over time, we started to develop this recognition of nobody cares what's for dinner if you're being chased by a bear.
Yes.
Nobody
Yes.
cares. Because right now I'm in the mode of, am I going to live or die within the next 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, right?
Yep.
And so being
Exactly.
in that survivor mode, and there's so much capacity for self-flagellation and self-hatred and negative self-talk. What you're talking about allows for the capacity for a person to give their parts grace to say, I get that that's how you'd respond, and I see why you'd respond that way. However, that worked when I was 3 and I was getting the crap beaten out of me, but it's not working
Mm-hmm.
now when I'm trying to converse with my husband.
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
Precisely. Me too. Because we're honestly, I think we're taught to judge those parts of us that don't allow us to fit in with what society expects of us, because our society in particular, does not um, allow for connection with others or with ourselves in the way that we are innately made to be. Like historically, we parented, we lived in community with one another, and that's how it was meant to be. But we live in an individualistic society that is all about productivity. And therefore, anything that doesn't fit into that, including kindness when I'm messing up, right? Compassion for how hard I'm trying, even if I'm not getting where I need to go.
Absolutely.
That, yeah, there's not been any space for it. And so I guess I think I've gotten to a space where all I want to talk about is the love and the connection. And yeah, it sounds a little Pollyanna-ish, but actually I think it's really just connecting back to source energy and getting more grounded and connected in, we are social creatures and we need one another, and we're not always kind to one another, but
Mhm.
if you haven't been kind to me and then I'm not kind to me, then how is anybody supposed to get what they need? So I'm going to start with being kind to me,
Yeah.
and that's going to trickle over into you, and good things can come from it.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I've discussed with a lot of patients about, especially when they're depressed or they've been traumatized chronically, a lot of the negative self-talk is just on repeat, right? And
Hmm.
and in order to try to reframe some of that, sometimes I'll ask them, okay, let's say, even if you're not a parent, let's say you had a kid or a goddaughter or godson or whatever, you're teaching them how to ride a bike and they fall and scrape their knee. Are you going to say, wow, what a dumbass, don't even try that again, you're stupid? No, you're not going to say that to them. You're going to be kind. You're going to fix their boo boo. You're going to give them a hug. You're going to encourage them and say, hey, I'm here for you. Scrapes happen. It's a part of the process. I got
Hmm.
you. Give it a try again, right? Why can't we give ourselves that same kindness? Why are we as adults not deserving of that same kindness and grace as you would give a child who is just learning something they don't know how to do?
Hmm. Yeah, what's coming to mind for me is I'm thinking about the parents, the adults who do treat that child without kindness sometimes because that's how they were treated,
Absolutely.
because that's how their parents were treated, and it gets passed on down. And
I know.
yeah, exactly. But in a healthy world, we do treat those little ones with kindness, and then to take that and internalize it is so valuable. But if you're doing that within a foundation that feels broken,
Mhm.
that feels flawed in so many ways, some people do have struggle with the initial idea of treating themselves with kindness. Well, I can do that once I've reached this goal, or
It's
accomplished
love.
X, Y.
Conditional love doesn't work
Exactly.
either. Yeah. Well, if
Yeah.
you're nice to me, then I'll be nice to you. Or if you make a
Yeah.
straight A on your grade card, then I will treat you with love and respect. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's all conditional, but we are good inside whether we meet certain conditions or not, which is just innate. That's my belief. And even when bad things happen, when you don't mean them to, you're
Like a
still
video
good
screen copy,
inside.
for instance. Yeah, that's a great example, actually.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
So cool. So, do you typically work with adults who've had trauma, kiddos, families in general, couples? What is your favorite?
My primary focus is individual with adults,
Okay.
individual therapy with adults, usually 18 and up, although I will go into the older teenagers and some couples work too, but really truly like I sit and hold space for individuals, I think most effectively at this point. I love that work and I love the variety of anybody who is open to the process, right? Who shows up interested in learning more about themselves, interested in healing. I think, been innately that way since I was little. Human nature always fascinated me. I wanted to understand myself and others, which I think is why I eventually stumbled into the field of psychology backwards. But I got here. I got just where I think I needed to be. But yeah, anybody who's open and shows up and just is curious, or hurting and just needs support, like I'm pretty. I'm an equal opportunity helper, I think.
I love that. I love that. I've always been literary and I've loved people's stories, like background stories and whatnot. And I found myself sort of like falling in love with the veterans that I worked with at the VA, like, and their stories and their backgrounds. And like, even when we could get them past like severely traumatic events or significant symptoms that impaired their functioning, like with medications and therapy, still they would tell themselves the story of I'm a f up, I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm like I like over time. Yes, neurochemically, I can help you absolutely. And strangely enough, I thought that that would be the hard part as a student, and as I've grown as a clinician, that's actually the easiest part, finding something that
Hmm.
works neurochemically. But then what are we doing about the stories that you're telling yourself, about the narrative that you keep about yourself or about what's happened to you or your family of origin, or a trauma that has happened, or an event that occurred, and then like from
Yeah.
this point forward my tree branched this way. Like that's
Hmm.
that's what is interesting to me, and I think part of the good work and difficult work of therapy is the very brain that is telling us we're worthless, we're stupid, we're feeling the nasty adjective, is the same filter that we're trying to change the way we look at the perception of our own reality.
Mm, so true. I like how you said that. The stories that we tell ourselves, that's the hardest to change because even as you change, get symptoms under control and change in a new direction, there are still parts within us that are saying, yeah, but. remember when, or yeah, but this is still true. And so
Well, it's
that's
good
why I
for now,
think
but just wait till the other shoe drops. I'm like, dude, the shoe's already
exactly.
dropped. It's already on the floor. Both pairs, all
Yeah,
of them. Like,
exactly. Exactly. So that's why I think it's so valuable to hold space for the parts and their belief systems and where they got it from. I also think is incredibly important because more often than not, this stuff is passed down. It is a legacy burden, is what we call it in IFS, because um, someone figured out a long time ago that this story is what keeps me safe. And then that was in their DNA, and then that just got passed on and on. And so it's useful to help hold space for parts to share and for people to understand what is the origin of this? Why do I believe this? And is this necessarily true? And actually, if not, what do I want to replace this with? What would serve me better moving forward? So it's not just understanding the story and rewriting it, because then you don't feel that in your DNA. It's tracing it back to its origin,
oh yeah.
and then what is the path we want to forge moving forward. So
Yeah. Familial
it's
trauma definitely lives in the DNA, but I love the idea of asking the question when you're down in the muck and you're repeating the same statement to yourself over and over again about some negative attribute of yourself or your identity. What or who does this serve?
mm, yes.
Does this serve the version of what I am looking to be in the future? Does this serve the healthy version of me? Does this serve the unhealthy version of me? Does this take away responsibility
Hmm.
that I have to hold on to and internalize in order to be able to heal? Or is this just what my mom told me and my grandma told me, and this is just how guys are, and this is just what that, like, is this one of those situations where
Yeah.
it's more of a, wait, they told me that, but do I actually believe it or did I just accept it as truth?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were saying that, the thing that popped into my mind that sometimes allows us to even get to, you know, what you just said was, whose belief is this? Does this belong to me, or does this belong to someone else? And if so, who? And maybe where did they get it from? And then, okay, now what do we want to do with it? Because once you have that enlightenment, it allows for a little more space, a little more flexibility to say, oh, I thought that was mine, but maybe it wasn't. And therefore, do I want this to be mine for the rest of my life? And if not, what instead? What serves me better?
And I think that's so important because I see people sometimes in the depths and throes of depression or PTSD, right? And they assume that things couldn't possibly get better. And they look at me and they're like, oh, you want me to be some Pollyanna and I can do this and I'm good enough and I'm strong enough and gosh darn it, people like me, this
Mm-hmm.
traditional BS. I'm like, no, I don't even want to get you there. I just want to get you curious about the narrative, the story that you're telling about yourself. If you're
Mm-hmm.
curious, I tell it's sort of like weather, right? Like, is it really awful that it's 23 degrees or is it just 23 degrees? Like it just is, right? If I can get
Yeah.
you to a neutral observational space, like Buddhists, that sort of observational self, if I can get you to that neutral, it's just 23 degrees. It's neither good nor bad. Some people like
Mm-hmm.
cold, some people don't, but it's just 23 degrees. It is what it is. If I can get you to a neutral space and not judging it and just being curious about it, that opens up the possibility of maybe it's not bad,
Yeah.
dot, dot, dot.
Mm-hmm.
And if that leaves a space open for the possibility of not being bad, we can work to neutral. And if we can get to neutral, sometimes we can get to positive.
Absolutely. And if we can create that space, that zoom out in perspective to notice that it is possible that this
Mm-hmm.
always awful thing is actually quite neutral, it's just the lens. It also holds space for starting to notice what shows up in my body when I assume that 23 degrees is awful. What shows up in my body when I try it out in a more neutral or more positive way?
Mm-hmm.
Bringing back to that sense of trusting the language and the intelligence of the body to let us know when we've hit on something that's true versus when we've hit on something that is maybe someone else's truth or is maybe an adaptation to survive, but that doesn't feel true to me, as opposed to like that softening that happens when we hear or feel a truth.
I feel like distance creates perspective. It can be the distance of time, right? It could
Hmm.
be the distance from me saying something to you and getting it out of my head where it was just hamster wheeling. It could be me getting it out on a journal or just saying it out loud. Because sometimes we keep the things inside we assume are truths. And then when we speak them aloud, we're like, that doesn't really make sense when I said it out loud.
Hmm. It felt so true inside, but
Right.
we
Exactly.
needed that distance. Yes.
I love
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Which is one of the things that therapy is so helpful with,
For sure.
right? Have you ever seen that old cartoon where it's the therapist sitting across from the client and the client has this big ball of jumbled up different color string above and the therapist like rolling each color
Yeah. As
on
a
the
sitter,
other
I
side?
appreciate that character. Yeah.
Very much. And as a therapy client, I appreciate that too, right? We show up and it's just a mess inside. And what we need is someone to hold space softly, reflect it back. And that's part of what IFS does to teach us over time to be able to do that for ourselves, not instead of therapy, not instead of in connection with others, but also
In addition,
having that relation in addition. Yeah, which is, oh, it's just huge.
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, me too.
Um, do you find work with certain clientele more difficult than others?
That's a good question. I find that the people who show up ready to work are able to get farther, I think, in their process or maybe more quickly. But I also find the people who aren't ready to work are challenges for me and allow me to use my system in a way that's a little different than the ones who show up ready to work and open. The people who come in with defense mechanisms that make it hard for us to connect or make it hard for them to really even fully buy into doing the work, even though they're showing up, leads me to have to use my own body, my own nervous system as a tool in a different way. So no, I don't think I like one better. One, I know these are two of many different camps, but not one better than the other. But that's, I mean, the variety is the spice of life. I find it really interesting to have a collection of a variety of different ways of working.
And it's what's interesting when you say that. I find that you find out more about yourself as a therapist with a ladder, right?
Yes.
Where am I blocked? What do
Mm-hmm.
I need to work on? What do I need to open?
Yes.
Or, again, as a student, we see, I think, things a lot more black and white because we get information from the books and our teachers, and this is the way it's supposed to be, and this is how we pass our tests and all these things. And so we see, like, oh, I couldn't help this patient, therefore I failed at this. And when, again, as a more seasoned therapist, you look at it like they couldn't hear what I was offering at the time, but maybe we planted the seeds. And maybe
Exactly.
two or three or four people down the line, they're in a place in their life where they could receive it and fertilize it and water it, and then, but you at least planted the seeds. And I feel like it's not a trip up, it's not a failure, it's just part of the journey, depending on who you are and where
Absolutely.
you are.
I couldn't agree more. And we don't always get to be fortunate enough to be a part of seeing that progress. But even though I heard this over and over in graduate school, I don't think I fully absorbed it into my cells until I got to this place in my career where I can say, even if this person is done with our work together and I don't get to know what happens, I know that I held safe space for them. They knew it was okay to share with me, whether their nervous system allowed them to do that or not. This was good for them. And that's enough for me at this point. Even though, of course, yes, I want to help and fix everybody, except there is no fixing. There is no such thing as fixing. But those are my parts, right? Who probably led me into psychology to begin with, and I continue to work with. So just, I hold space for them as we hold space for others.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
me
love that.
too. It feels really nice.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely. Do you do other types of work outside of IFS, or is that your kind of main focus?
I'm still eclectic, integrative. IFS is now like the bones of what I do, and you won't hear a session without me mentioning something about
For
parts. But
sure. Yeah.
nervous system work has really I've gotten more into the somatic side of things, the body
Yeah.
side,
Yeah.
and polyvagal theory. Um, there's a little bit of DBT and dialectical behavior therapy and brain spotting. I haven't done EMDR training yet. That's on my to-do list, but brain spotting as a part of it just feels very um, useful. So there's all these different top-down and bottom-up approaches that I've been getting into, but really I'm very intuitive. And so, yes, I want to be scientifically minded and always attuned, but like I'm going to just notice what shows up and go with it because that's kind of
No,
what
I
works
agree.
best for me and my clients.
You could have been doing really excellent psychodynamic work with somebody for 5 years, and all of a sudden shit's the fan, and then, well, we need supportive right now. Maybe a little bit of CBT. Like, let's just
Yes.
little kind
Yeah.
of weave it back into.
Thoughts, feelings, behaviors. Let's get back to basics. Yeah, it's useful. I mean, we
Yes.
don't want to I don't want to rule anything out. I do find myself veering away from more manualized treatments where it's like do this and then do that, even though I think there's a lot of benefit in them for
Yes.
some specific issues,
Yes.
but within a larger context of who are you as a person and how are we relating to one another.
I find especially my folks who have ADHD are like, don't give me homework. I'm not even going to bother doing it. Like, so I know
Yeah.
yes, that this is not CBT is not a great way to go with these people.
No, no, we don't want to add more to their plate, but also like let's work on your nervous system because it's
Exactly.
pretty hard to focus and concentrate and stay organized when you're constantly in sympathetic fight or flight mode. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I love the work that you're doing. I
Thank
love
you.
how complementary it is with what we're doing, obviously. I love that you have found a balance for your practice and your patients and your life, and you're actually living what you preach, which is hella cool. And
Thank you.
I think that's awesome. So I guess what I would like the viewers to know is if they're interested in working with you and the awesomeness that is IFS, how would they go about getting in touch with you?
Absolutely. They can find me at my website, which is drrachelfaust.com. And I'm also on, Therapy Den, but they're welcome to also email me at drrachelfaust@gmail.com. I'm open
That's
to that.
FAUST.
FAURACHELFAUST with a DR at the front. And then they're also welcome to listen to my podcast if they want to learn more just about me and IFS and polyvagal theory and all that. And that's authentically connected with Dr. Rachel Faust on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and also on YouTube. And they can find it through my website also.
I love that. That is so awesome. So many great ways
Thank
to stay
you.
connected.
I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you.
Oh my gosh, my absolute pleasure. I love learning new things and I love meeting new people and connecting in these ways and how we can help each other as a community. Um,
Yes.
so thank you once again. And this is Dr. Teresa Anderson on our Psych Waves podcast. If you need to get in touch with the Anderson Clinic, we are at www.andersonclinic.net. Or if you're a local, feel free to call 513-321-1753.
Awesome. Thank you.